Did you know that while most people think they know who controls Turkey's wealth, there's actually one family that owns more than the next five? Richest families combined? In the next few minutes, I'm going to reveal 3 shocking facts about the wealthiest family in Turkey that will completely change how you see power and money in this country. By the end of this video, you'll understand why their influence reaches into every part of daily life and how their story connects to your own future. But before we dive in, let me show you exactly how this happened. Let's start with the basics. Turkey's economy has been growing and changing for decades, and most people think the richest families made their money from traditional businesses like textiles or food. But here's what's really going on behind the scenes. First, you need to understand that Turkey's wealth isn't spread out evenly at all. Just 10 families control nearly 40% of the country's total private wealth. This matters because when so few people have so much power, it affects everything from the prices you pay at the store to the jobs available in your city. Think about it this way. Every single day, you probably use a product, service, or building that's connected to one of these ultra-wealthy families. Without knowing this foundation, the revelations coming next won't make complete sense. Here's where it gets interesting. The main players in this story are the Koç family, the Sabancı family, and the Doğan family. Each one built their empire in different ways, but they all share one thing in common. They started small and grew into giants that now touch every corner of Turkish life. Now, most people assume these families just got lucky or inherited everything, but there's actually a hidden pattern to how they gained their power. After the founding of modern Turkey, certain families positioned themselves perfectly to take advantage of new opportunities. They built relationships with the government, invested in industries that were just starting to grow, and made bold moves when others were too scared to try. To keep you engaged, here's something most people don't realize. The richest family in Turkey actually started with almost nothing. Their founder began as a simple merchant, but through smart decisions and perfect timing, turned a small shop into a business empire. And here's another surprising detail. This same family now employs more people than some entire cities have as population. The richest family in Turkey is the Koç family, and their wealth is absolutely staggering. We're talking about a fortune worth over $30 billion, built across nearly 100 years of business. But the truly shocking part isn't just the money itself. Here's the first major revelation that will blow your mind. The Koç family's businesses account for roughly 10% of Turkey's entire GDP. Let that sink in for a moment. One single family's companies generate 1/10 of everything the whole country produces. That means when you fill up your gas tank at a Koç-owned fuel station, buy appliances from their stores, or even use certain banks, you're putting money into their empire. The second thing that makes this even more incredible is how they got there. Vehbi Koç, the founder, started his business journey in 1917 with a tiny grocery store in Ankara. He had almost no money and no connections to powerful people. But he had something more valuable. He could see opportunities that others missed. When Turkey needed to modernize after becoming a republic, Vehbi Koç became the country's first official dealer for major foreign brands. He brought Ford cars to Turkey. He brought General Electric products to Turkey. Every time the country needed something new, the Koç family was there first. Let me paint you a picture of just how massive their reach is. Imagine waking up in the morning in an apartment built by a Koç construction company. You turn on your Arçelik refrigerator, also made by Koç. You drive your Ford car, sold through Koç dealerships, and stop to fill up at a Koç gas station. At work, your company might bank with Yapı Kredi, which Koç partly owns. After work, you shop at a Koç retail store. Without even realizing it, you've interacted with this one, family's businesses, 5 or 6 times in a single day. But if you think that's crazy, wait until you hear this. The Koç family's power goes way beyond their bank account. Here's the second major revelation that most people never consider. They've built a system that makes it almost impossible for their wealth to disappear. Most rich families lose their fortunes within 3 generations. There's even a famous saying about it. The first generation builds it, the second generation maintains it, and the third generation destroys it. But the Koç family has defied this pattern for nearly a century now, and here's how they did it. They created something called a holding company structure, which is like a giant umbrella that protects all their different businesses. Under Koç Holding, they have more than 100 companies, spread across every major industry you can imagine. Energy, automotive, finance, retail, technology, defense, healthcare, and more. When one industry struggles, 20 others keep making money. It's like having 100 different jobs instead of just one. If you lose one job, you've still got 99 others paying you. Here's where the story gets even more complex. The current generation, running the company isn't just maintaining what their grandfather built. They're expanding into completely new areas. They've invested heavily in technology startups. They're building electric vehicle infrastructure before most people even own electric cars. They're getting into renewable energy while others are still focused on oil and gas. They're always thinking 10 or 20 years ahead, but there's something even more surprising that shows how deep their influence goes. The Koç family doesn't just make money. They shape Turkish society itself. They run Koç University, one of the country's top schools. They operate museums. They fund massive charity programs through Veby Koç Foundation, which has given away billions over the years. They're not just business owners, they're nation builders. Now, let me give you some specific numbers that really show the scale we're talking about. Koç Holding employs over 100,000 people directly. When you count all the indirect jobs they create through suppliers and partners, that number jumps to nearly 400,000. That's like an entire mid-sized city working for one family's businesses. Their annual revenue is bigger than the entire economy of some small countries. And here's a comparison that really puts it in perspective. If you took the combined wealth of the 50 richest people in many other countries, the Koç family would still be richer than most of them. While other billionaires made their money from one big idea or one successful company, the Koç empire is built on hundreds of successful companies working together. Now we're getting to the climax, the part that connects everything and reveals the biggest truth about Turkey's wealthiest family. Here's the third and final revelation. The Koç family's real power isn't their money or their businesses. It's their ability to survive and thrive through every crisis Turkey has faced for almost 100 years. Think about everything Turkey has been through since 1917 World War I, the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, the birth of a new nation, World War II, multiple military coups, economic crashes, political upheaval, currency crises, and through every single one of these massive challenges, while other families rose and fell, the Koç family not only survived but grew stronger. How did they do this? Here's the game-changing secret. They mastered the art of adaptation. When Turkey's economy was closed off to the world, they focused on domestic production. When Turkey opened up to global trade, they became international players. When manufacturing was everything, they dominated manufacturing. When services became important, they expanded into banking and retail. When technology started changing everything, they invested in digital transformation. They're like water, always flowing into whatever shape the container takes. But here's what really sets them apart from every other wealthy family. They've built something that economists call systemic importance. This means they're so deeply woven into Turkey's economy that the country's success and their success are basically the same thing. When Turkey does well, Koç does well. But also when Koç does well, Turkey does well. They've made themselves essential. Let me give you the most dramatic example of this. During the 2001 economic crisis, when Turkey's economy collapsed and millions of people lost their jobs, the Koç family actually helped stabilize the situation. Their companies kept operating, kept employing people, and kept investing even when it seemed crazy to do so. They had enough resources and confidence to act like a safety net for part of the economy. That's not just wealth. That's power at a completely different level. And here's the evidence that proves just how unshakable their position is. In 2018, during another currency crisis when the Turkish lira lost massive value, most businesses were panicking. But Koç Holding announced they would invest an additional $6.5 billion into Turkey over the next 3 years. While others were running away, they were doubling down. That's the mentality that keeps them on top generation after generation. Now that you understand the full story, here's why this matters to regular people like you and me. The Koç family's dominance shows us something important about how wealth and power actually work in the modern world. First, there's a lesson here about long-term thinking. While most people in businesses focus on quick profits, the Koç family has always played the long game. They invested in education and infrastructure decades before seeing returns. They built relationships that paid off years later. They entered industries that weren't profitable yet, but would be in the future. If you want to build something that lasts, whether it's a business or just your personal wealth, you need to think in decades, not days. Second, this affects your daily life in ways you probably never considered. The next time you make a purchase or use a service in Turkey, there's a good chance some of that money flows to the Koç Empire. Understanding who controls what helps. You make more informed decisions as a consumer and citizen. When one family has this much influence, it impacts government policies, employment opportunities, and even what products are available in stores. Third, there are bigger implications for Turkey's future. As the country develops and changes, the role of these massive family businesses will evolve too. Will they help Turkey become a high-tech economy, or will they hold it back? Will new entrepreneurs get chances to build their own empires, or will the existing giants keep getting bigger? These questions affect whether your children will have good opportunities or struggle to compete. Looking ahead, here are the real consequences we need to think about. Economic inequality in Turkey is growing, and when so much wealth concentrates in so few hands, it creates social tension. At the same time, having strong, stable companies that can compete globally is important for the country's development. It's complicated, and there's no simple answer. On a personal level, understanding this wealth structure can help you make smarter career choices. If you want job security, working for a Koç company might be safer than a small startup. But if you want to build your own fortune, you need to find gaps in the market that the giants haven't filled yet. Knowledge is power, and now you have knowledge that most people don't. Here's the last unexpected fact that brings everything full circle. The future of Turkey's richest family isn't guaranteed, even with all their power and preparation. The fourth generation is now taking control, and history shows this is when most family businesses fall apart. Brothers and sisters fight over control. Cousins disagree about strategy. The family tree branches out so much that nobody feels personally responsible anymore. But there's also a twist in this story that makes it unique. The Koç family saw this problem coming decades ago and did something radical. They created a strict system of rules and training for family members who want to be involved in the business. Young Koç have to prove themselves by working at other companies first. They need real education and real experience. They can't just show up and demand a position because of their last name. This brings us to the emotional core of this whole story. Behind all the billions of dollars and massive companies, there's a human element. Veby Koç grew up poor and built an empire through hard work and smart decisions. His children and grandchildren could have just lived off that wealth and done nothing, but instead they chose to keep building. There's something admirable about that, even if the concentration of wealth itself is controversial. The real resolution here is understanding that the Koç family represents both the best and the hardest parts of capitalism. They show what's possible when people think long-term, work hard, and make smart choices. But they also show how wealth creates more wealth, and how hard it is for others to catch up once someone gets so far ahead. And remember that shocking fact I mentioned at the beginning? The one about how the richest family owns more than the next 5 families combined? Now you understand it's not just about money. It's about a system built over nearly a century, with hundreds of companies, thousands of employees, and deep connections throughout every part of society. That's not something that happens by accident or luck. It's the result of consistent strategy across multiple generations. So the next time you see a Koç company logo or hear the family name in the news, you'll know the full story behind it. You'll understand that you're looking at Turkey's most powerful dynasty, a family that has shaped the country's economy for 100 years and will likely continue doing so for generations to come. That's the hidden truth that nobody tells you about the richest family in Turkey.